Alright, Chapter 19, President's Capitals and Gettysburg. If you thought for a minute that mastering the times tables would be enough for me to learn during the summer, think again. My Uncle Jake had other ideas. He wanted me to learn a bunch of other stuff too. Once I got the times tables in less than 3 minutes, he made me make flashcards for every state in America and the capital of each state. Next, he wanted me to learn the name of every president we have ever had. I had no idea how I was going to do that. So Uncle Jake sat me down. He told me to write down every single president on a piece of paper. Like flashcards, I asked? No, not this time. Just write them down on a piece of paper in a row or two. Okay, Uncle Jake walked out of the room, and I pulled out a book from school that had all the presidents in them, and I wrote them down in 2 rows like this. Just as I finished it up, Uncle Jake came back into my room, and I showed him the list. Good, he said. Now let's trailblaze. What's that, I asked. It's another way to memorize things. Things that are longer and not direct question and answer, like the president's or the Gettysburg Address. What's the Gettysburg Address, I asked. What's the Gettysburg Address? Really? All right, we'll get to that later. Right now, let's focus on the presidents. Look at them and memorize the first 10. I'll give you 5 minutes. With that, Uncle Jake walked out the door. Now what was I going to do? How could I ever memorize these in 5 minutes? I looked down at the paper. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Adams, Jackson, Van Buren, Harrison, Tyler. I read through them again. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Adams, Jackson, Van Buren, Harrison, Tyler. And I did it again and again. Then Uncle Jake came back in. You got them memorized yet? He asked. I thought he might be kidding, but he wasn't. No, I said, not even close. That's okay. No one can memorize that fast, but you can definitely memorize this easily. Now, take one last look at those first 10, but focus on the first 4. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison. I looked down at the paper again, looking at the first 4. Again, Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison. Okay, Uncle Jake said as he snatched the paper away from me. Go. Washington, Adams, Jefferson. I knew that the next one began with an M, but I just couldn't remember the rest of it. Uncle Jake gave me a hint. Madison? Yes. Now look at the paper, and then start over again at the beginning. Down the trail you had already made, but try to go just a little farther down the trail each time. I looked at the paper and saw Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe. Uncle Jake flipped the paper over. I started again. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe? Yes, Uncle Jake said. And who's after Monroe? I actually have no idea. That's okay. Look at the paper again. I looked down and saw that after Monroe was Adams. I thought to myself, Monroe, Adams, Monroe, Adams, Monroe, Adams. You ready, Uncle Jake asked. I guess so, I replied. Go, from the beginning. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Adams. Yes, Uncle Jake said, that's it. Each time you get stumped, you stop, take a look, think about how it ties into what you already know, then go back to the beginning of whatever you are trying to memorize. The beginning of the trail. I just want you to finish the first 10 tonight. I will test you on them in the morning. And that was it. It was a simple system, and it worked. I kept repeating the presidents I knew, and then, when I got stumped, I would check the paper, look at it, and try to memorize the next one. And then, put the paper down, and go back to the beginning. I didn't always get it right, and I got stumped a few times really bad. I had to go back and look at the paper 6 times for Van Buren. What kind of name is Van Buren anyway? But I got them memorized. The next morning, as soon as I rolled out of bed, Uncle Jake was there. Go, he said. Go? Go where? I asked, still a little groggy. The presidents. Let's hear the first 10. Oh yeah, I said those. Here we go. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Adams, Jackson, Van Buren, Harrison, Tyler. Uncle Jake got a smile out of that. Good job, Mark, he said. Good job. Thanks, Uncle Jake. We headed down for the morning workout. So, for the next 4 nights, you can keep working on memorizing the presidents. Once you have those, you can move on to the Gettysburg Address. You still haven't told me what that is, Uncle Jake. Well, the first thing you need to know about is the Battle of Gettysburg, Uncle Jake said. Then he told me all about it. It was a brutal battle in the Civil War near the town of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Almost 50,000 men were killed or wounded in 3 days of fighting. After the battle was over, President Lincoln came to the site and gave a speech called the Gettysburg Address. Although the speech was only 10 sentences long and President Lincoln only spoke for 2 minutes, my Uncle Jake says it was one of the best speeches ever. I copied it out of a history book. 70 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But, in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us living rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave their last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. Uncle Jake said everyone should memorize that speech. I agree with him, and I will. Alright, chapter 20 up next.